Man confesses murder on camera to reporter. Because of a surprising confession, the mystery that had been around the murder of Frank McAllister has been lifted, lifting the veil of uncertainty that had been surrounding the case before to this. This removes the mystery that had been surrounding the case. This occurrence has finally taken place after a quarter of a century that was shrouded in obscurity and suffering from beginning to end. After being kept in the shadows for the past quarter of a century, Brian Hawkins has now come out to admit that he was engaged in the tragic events that took place in 1993. This admission comes despite the fact that he has been kept in the shadows. Despite the fact that he has been stopped from going forward, he has come forth with this revelation. This revelation not only gives the family of McAllister, who are in a state of mourning, a sense of closure, but it also launches legal actions that have the potential to ultimately bring about justice for the awful loss of a young person who was taken from this world. In 1993, the kidnapping of Frank McAllister, who was 19 years old at the time, caused shockwaves to spread throughout the town of Oak Ridge, which is known for its closeness. A shockwave was sent throughout the neighborhood as a result of the kidnapping of McAllister. Since the year 1993, McAllister has not been seen or heard from. He has not been seen or heard from. It was his automobile, which had been abandoned in a parking lot in a remote place, that was the only physical trace that was discovered in a case that would remain unsolved for more than 20 years. There was no other hint that was found than this one. Throughout the course of the investigation, these were the sole pieces of evidence that were discovered. Despite the diligent efforts of law enforcement and the emotional pleas of McAllister's family, the truth about McAllister's disappearance remained elusive, which cast a lengthy shadow over the city. This was the case despite the fact that McAllister's family had been pleading with law enforcement for a long time. In spite of the fact that members of the community were participating in the investigation, this was the situation throughout. This was the scenario even though McAllister's family had submitted a significant number of petitions, yet the situation remained the same. After remaining silent for a number of years, Brian Hawkins has now broken his silence and admitted to being involved in the murder of Margaret McAllister. This admission comes after Hawkins had been silent for numerous years. After a period of silence, he finally broke his silence and admitted what he had been thinking. It is asserted by Hawkins that he was involved in the criminal activity, alleging that he, together with Curtis and Shauna Culver, was responsible for the execution of a robbery that ultimately resulted in fatalities. More than that, he asserts that he was personally involved in the criminal activity. They challenged McAllister, robbed him, and ultimately succeeded in stabbing him to death before disposing of his body in the woods that were located in the nearby area, according to the allegations that had been brought against them. Regarding the allegations, this is in agreement with them. Several individuals who had long since given up hope of ever solving the mystery of McAllister's disappearance have been taken aback by the information that Hawkins has released as a result of his revelation regarding the subject matter. This information has been revealed as a result of Hawkins' revelation. Hawkins has provided them with information that has caught them off guard, which is the reason for this scenario. Because of Hawkins' confession, the McAllister family goes through a range of emotions, including feelings of relief and despair. These emotions are brought on by the circumstances. The agony of recognizing the awful tragedy that befell their beloved Frank is being mitigated by the relief of finally having answers delivered to them. It has been years of agonizing doubt, but now that they finally have answers, the suffering of it is being lessened by the confidence that they finally have answers. This is due to the fact that they have now been given all of the answers before this point. When they consider the possibility that justice may finally be within reach as a result of their efforts, their hearts, which are filled with anguish, are filled with a glimmer of peace. This is because their hearts are filled with the same pain. Despite the fact that the discomfort brought on by their absence can never be totally eliminated, this is the situation that exists. In the course of this confession, Hawkins stated that he felt a great deal of guilt for his acts and that he was responsible for the irreparable suffering that he brought to McAllister and his family, who were going through a difficult phase in their lives. He also admitted that he was accountable for the pain that he caused to McAllister's family. He talked about the enormous burden that he had been carrying for the past quarter of a century, which was the humiliation that he felt for his involvement in such a heinous crime. He said that he had been bearing this burden for the entire time. He stated that he had, for the previous quarter of a century, been carrying the weight of this responsibility. In his statement, he noted that he had been bearing the burden of this obligation for the past quarter of a century. It would appear that Hawkins is determined to confront his demons and seek penance for the irreparable damage that she has caused. This is because he is currently being confronted with the consequences of his actions that occurred in the past. This is due to the fact that he is currently grappling with the repercussions that his actions have brought about. Once the police had gotten Hawkins' confession, they did not waste any time in initiating legal actions against all three individuals who were suspected of being involved in the murder of McAllister. Legal proceedings were initiated against all three individuals. All these people were accused of being involved in the murder of McAllister because they worked together. Despite the fact that they had previously denied any role in the problem, Curtis and Shauna Culver are currently being held accountable for their actions in conjunction with Hawkins. This is the case despite the fact that they had denied any involvement in the matter. The fact that they have not been involved in any way, shape, or form is something that they refuse to acknowledge. In the hope that justice will finally be served to McAllister and his family, who are going through the anguish of losing a loved one, the community is waiting with bated breath for the court hearings to begin. They are hoping that justice will finally be served. Everyone in the community is keeping a careful eye on the situation that is now taking place. A key turning point in the investigation into the murder of Frank McAllister, which has been going on for decades, is the disclosure of Brian Hawkins' confession. This confession was not made public until recently. A critical turning point in the investigation has been reached as a result of this information. It offers some measure of comfort to a family that has endured years of suffering and uncertainty, bringing them a sense of closure during a period in which they have been confronted with a significant loss. In order to achieve this goal, the family was given the opportunity to experience some form of closure. The community is unified in its support for the McAllister family and its unyielding desire to work toward the goal of ensuring that those responsible for this terrible tragedy are held accountable for their actions. The McAllister family is receiving unwavering support from the community despite the fact that the legal procedure is making progress to go forward. As a result of the community's ongoing efforts to go forward with the legal procedure, this new development has come about. The support that has been provided is concrete evidence of the unwavering devotion of the community as well as the fact that they have banded together to provide assistance to one another. Would you like it? Hit the like button and subscribe to our channels for more interesting and informative videos.